So, good morning, everyone. Just to inform you of a change in the agenda order this morning. So if you look towards the back of your agenda, you have item 16, which is the freehold sale of Parklands mobile site. Fakenham, I propose bring that forward to, should we say, below item 6. The reason being, we have a member of the public who's interested in the item has come to speak, and I don't want him to have to wait till near the end of the meeting. And just to be aware, though, if you wish to discuss the particulars of this item and the bidders, we will have to go into exempt business. So therefore, the stream will have to be stopped, and members of the public will unfortunately be excluded from that part of the meetings. But obviously, you can avoid doing that and discuss above the line. So it's up to you, obviously, if you wish to do that. Is that all understood by everyone? Is everyone happy that we do that? Brilliant. Yes. Yeah. He's on his way, is he? Okay, brilliant. Okay, well, we'll do our best. If we have to just sort of kick it down an item at a time, we'll do so. Okay, so the first item is to receive apologies for absence. I think we've got a full house. Minutes, to approve the minutes of the meeting held 3rd of May. Were there any questions on the minutes? No. Okay, I propose they're accepted. Seconded by John, and I presume we're all in favour of that. Public questions and statements. So we're joined, forgive me if I don't get your name, is it Mr. McEwen, is that correct? Would you wish to speak now, or you're very welcome to? Thank you. If you can, yeah, if you can sit down in front of you and press one of the microphone buttons, and that will just enable members of the public who might be tuning in just to hear you.
For their benefit.
For their benefit, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, this is a statement read out on behalf of the residents of Parklands residential home site. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity for our voices to be heard. Second, thank you for the time you've taken in your deliberations concerning the sales of Parklands. Whilst the council is duty bound to obtain best value under section 123 Local Government Act 1972, it's worth noting that best value is not always delivered by the highest bidder. It is no secret that we are concerned that the highest bidder may not offer the best value to the residents, only to shareholders. We are especially concerned, as many remember the sale of Hardwick Park home site in Kings Lynn and the unpleasant outcome that resulted for residents there. Of course, the Mobile Homes Act, I beg your pardon, of 1983 has been revised in 2013 to try to prevent such events recurring, and Parklands is a protected site within the meaning of the Mobile Homes Act of 83, revised 13. Finally, we understand the need for North Norfolk District Council to raise as much money as possible from the sale. We ask you from the bottom of our hearts, please, to choose wisely for us. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir, for coming to speak to us today. That's valuable and useful for the members. Okay, are we happy to move to the next item, which is the declarations of interest in items on the agenda? Okay. Items of urgent business. I don't believe there are any. Members' questions. So we're joined by Nigel, John and Christopher. I don't know if you want to ask any questions at this stage. Okay. Oh, sorry. And also, Andrew, I see you there at the back. If you wanted to ask any questions at this stage, you're very welcome to. Oh, okay. That sounds daunting. Okay. Item 7, yeah, sure. If we deal with an item and until we can move on to deal with, I believe it's item 16. So recommendations from the Cabinet Working Party. First of all, Planning Policy and Built Heritage Working Party. So we have 3 recommendations there. I don't know if there's anyone wanted to say anything, Andrew or John.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we eventually, I think, got an appraisal which we could accept as a working party at the April meeting. It was due to go through at the March meeting, but we needed to examine it a little bit further and give it some more consideration. And I'm pleased to say that I think we've got an appraisal that we can recommend to Cabinet and eventually for adoption at full council. I'm really pleased to say that the process which started back in December for the appraisal is now complete.
Brilliant. John, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you to Andrew for that and for chairing this all the way through, and also the committee, but also the work that was put in to produce this obviously extensive report, the deliberations that have gone on. But I think, as Councillor Brown says, we've arrived at a good place with these, and it's been a considerable amount of work. But thank you to everybody involved. Thank you.
Okay. If that's everything. Recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. There were 3 areas of recommendations around the sale of parklands, engagement strategy and the Levelling Up Fund. Nigel, do you want to say something? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, you'll notice that we did comment on the parklands matter, and no doubt you'll deal with that in due course. The other matters that I want to raise, I think worthy of raising, are certainly the pre-scrutiny of the engagement strategy and the merits of holding a member workshop. And there are, I believe, further contributions that can be made towards the honing of that particular strategy. So I would commend that for you, please. And moving on to the levelling up matter, you'll see that there were 3 significant observations and comments that arose from that. Again, that was an urgent business matter, and I think the first one I would particularly make mention of, which is the process by which proposals are promoted and prepared for short notice funding schemes need to be transparent, objectively scored against agreed priorities and fairly distributed across the district. And that feeds into the second one, which is opportunities needed for town and parish councils to submit possible project proposals. I won't read the rest of that, but I think that links, Mr. Chairman, with an email that you sent round recently inviting proposals along those lines. And I think that would be a very useful exercise, and to see that come to fruition in due course will be very helpful towards informing how these particular funding streams can be perhaps supported in a more organized way, perhaps in a more objective way than perhaps these 2 proposals, which we don't make any comments with regard to the merits, because I think they probably stand on their own rights, and we're also recognise that pragmatically speaking, the timescales relating to this funding stream doesn't give us very much opportunity to do very much else. That's a deep disappointment, I have to say. It's not one that I necessarily lay at your door, but I think it is a matter that does need to be and could have been addressed long before now with regard to proposals which we could tap into on a call-off list to meet various funding opportunities as they arise. And perhaps maybe the levelling up programme, and I don't know, to be honest, I am not familiar enough to know exactly what's coming down the track with regard to that. But if there are a number of funding rounds still to come, then we need to prepare ourselves in a more structured and objectively arranged way than perhaps has been possible so far. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll stay my comments at that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's useful. I mean, I suppose you could point to examples like the changing places facilities where we knew, a fund was coming. We've been successful in realising and achieving some goals there, in that we want some funding to build some more of those facilities, and the scale of our ambitions are recognised. Clearly, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't predict all of the funds, but it would be nice to look at this in further detail. So I would want to have an offline discussion with you soon to see what we can develop here, and certainly discuss the suggestions of members. I think this is welcome. There are, I suppose, some drawbacks in terms of building expectations potentially within different localities, and given the drawbacks potentially in not understanding the funds that may or may not become available, and whether projects would fit within the funds available. It's there are some problems there, but certainly I think it's worthy of exploration. So I look forward to having a further discussion with you, Nigel. Okay, if we can move to item 16. Sorry to catch you off guard, Neil, but we're going to deal with this item now, if possible. We've obviously had a member of the public come speak to us today about the sale of Parklands, and I believe it was really in our interest to ensure that he wasn't waiting for the whole of the meeting. So I hope that's okay for you. Sorry for any disruption. So clearly, we've got to be careful not to stray into exempt territory. If you want to do so and have a discussion about the bidders, etc., in greater detail, we will need to do that and turn the live stream off. So as long as that's understood by everyone, please flag it if you wish to. So introducing this item, obviously it's been ongoing for some time. Neil, did you want to say something just to sort of
yeah, I'll just say that the paper is really the result of quite a long-standing process. Cabinet approved the original sale in March 2020. We went to the market in the summer. We closed the bids on October the 15th from memory. And since then, we've been through that due diligence process. And this paper is a result of that today. So if I can, I'm not going to run through the paper, but if anybody's got any queries, then please ask.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members. This paper, starting on page 179, sets out a recommendation that the sale of the site should be to bidder C. The only thing I can confirm is that the level of bid received is in accordance with the independent market valuation. The report in paragraph 1 sets out the background and the reasons for the council wishing to sell this particular site. There is a lot of detail in paragraph 2 about the disposal process and the need for due diligence. And the reason for that is very simple, and it was touched on by the residents in their statement. The council from the outset was very anxious that whoever bought this site should be a fit and proper person, that the site should be properly managed, and that there was a clear recognition here that we were dealing with people's homes. And that's why this report goes into some considerable detail. I just draw members' attention to paragraph 2.7, which says, whilst the county is duty bound to obtain best value under section 123 of the Local Government Act, officers recognise the potential concerns of residents regarding the future owner of the site, and that it is essential to proceed only with a suitable purchaser that has appropriate experience, skills and conduct to manage the site. And that does echo, I think, where the council has been throughout this process. The only other thing I think I will say just on paragraph 2 is that within the papers, there was an interview that took place with the bidders. They're not identified, but there are scores there. But we need to bear in mind that there was far more fuller information and more information has been obtained about the prospective bidders that actually took place in the interview. It was only part of the process. Paragraph 7 of the report goes through the legal obligations, and I would like to thank the legal officer for the advice that's been provided. The council is, as correct as been quoted, required to sell the site for best value, but there is an exemption to this rule enabling the council to sell the site at below market value. And we could do that by using the general disposal consent order. However, we would have to have grounds for doing so. And we'd have, on the information available to us, have to be able to clearly demonstrate that. So it is on that basis, Mr. Chairman, colleagues, that I recommend that we go for bidder C. And in doing that, I will just say this. I am acutely aware from my own experience and casework in North Walsham of the challenges that holiday home parks and mobile home parks can present. And where these sites are well managed, they are secure homes for the individuals concerned. Where they are not so well managed, then and things start to go wrong, then they can cause enormous heartache and problems for the residents concerned. So I cannot in this instance say when we sell the site that what we would like to think is that they will be a proper operation of this site. They do have to have a site license and be able to demonstrate they are a fit and proper person. But on the basis of all the information that's available to us, I believe that they will properly manage the site. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Was there anyone that wished to speak or ask a question? John.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wondered whether I could get some confirmation on the process which allows a bidder to come back and increase their offer. And do we offer that to all of the bidders? Because it's obviously what's been stated. And I just wondered what our process was for that.
Yeah, I can clarify that. The process, when we held the interviews downstairs, we interviewed all 7 parties. One of them failed to turn up, so we dismissed them from the process straight away. During the interviews, 2 of the parties made it clear to us that they wanted to make higher offers. We didn't seek higher offers. They asked whether they could. We said, yes, you could do that, but after the interview process, and please do it directly through our selling agent rather than to us directly. So after that, they did that. A few days afterwards, those bids were made. And you're right, we actually said to all of the parties then, we've had 2 other bids, 2 higher bids from the same parties. Would you like to reconsider your position? And we gave them a short deadline, a week or so, to respond. and no one else did in terms of making a high bid.
Thank you. Is that okay, John? Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so I think Eric proposed that we accept the recommendation for bidder C. I'm happy to second that. So can we just have a vote all in favour, please? That's unanimous. Brilliant. Thank you. And thank you for your time, Neil. And for your time, Mr. Chair. Okay, we go back to item 9, North Norfolk Sustainable Communities Fund Annual Review. And I believe we have Sonia with us today. If we have any questions, I don't know if you wanted to say anything to introduce this item. Sonia, if you wanted to go ahead, Virginia. Okay, brilliant.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say that I think this is a very illustrative report. It gives testimony to the good work done by the panel and by Mrs. Shooter. If there is one thing which is of slight concern to me, it is to look at the map and see the blank spaces. This only represents a year of awards, but I think it would be a nice idea to write further to parishes, possibly email them a copy of this report, just to encourage a wider applications from further across the district. But that would be my main suggestion. There's a slight mistake still with a comma that was drawn attention at pre-agenda. For the under 1,000 bids, you can see a discrepancy between the two of them, and I think that remains to be corrected. But I think that's all I have to say. I do recommend this to people. I think it represents a lot of good work on the part of many, many people. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I think it's I certainly considered that the fund is helping the council reach its priorities. I do feel it's annoying that Second Homes council tax, as it was, no longer contributes to this fund, but many of the councils, of course, do not have such a fund that they are able to invest into their communities in this way. So I think something we can be proud of and all that it's achieved. Obviously, you know, I suppose we can agonise quite a lot over or certain parishes aren't getting it. I know, you know, for instance, in the East Hickling ward, in this last year, for instance, there have been no bids, but certainly in the previous year, there were some very, very good projects, as pointed out to me by the member for the ward, Harry Blathwaite. So it's something that obviously changes year on year, but I agree that we must get out and promote this as best we can to the parishes and community groups. And we did have a conversation offline about putting something out to those ahead of the meeting. So that's something we will discuss and outside of the meeting and agree. Certainly, I think it's worthy that they do get the report. It's a very good report, and thank you for the time put into it, Sonia. Richard, you indicated.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I have taken this fund to all my parishes, and you can take a horse to water, but etc. But when we have had applications come in, can I just say how well they've been handled by Sonia and the team? And yeah, these are the gatekeepers. They're here to help, and I think that's something we need to reinforce when we widen the offer. That our officers are here to help. They're not here to obstruct, and I've found them to be absolutely first rate. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, were there any other questions? Nigel Dixon, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would support efforts to secure wider engagement across the district, and certainly the indications of the past year do represent a significant imbalance. I haven't looked back at previous years, but I wonder if we were to look back over previous years, whether there is a trend there at all, and whether that trend might be evidence of a need to put into or put in greater efforts to secure that engagement. It's just a point that I would invite a little bit more work to be done, because I think it really is important to secure that engagement across the district. And this is a matter that will arise in further perhaps mentions today when we talk about engagement, when we talk about the degree of levelling up and how that needs to be done. The engagement of town and parish councils and significant stakeholders outside of that group are fundamental to securing that balance. I'll hold my comments at that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I think that's useful. I think we're all on board here. We do need to engage with all of the parishes, and I think, as we've heard, members are promoting this to the parish councils, whether that reaches all the individual community groups active within our divisions, or possibly not, but we will redouble our efforts. Wendy, you indicated.
I was just about to say what you were going to say. It's really one of the jobs as a member that we should be promoting this. So if we could send this report over to all members and ask them to discuss that with their communities, I think that might be a good idea, not only just the town and parish councils, but obviously active members in their communities will be able to talk to their community groups. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to reiterate the point that Councillor Dixon made. I mean, I believe this initiative was started by the last Conservative administration when it's called the Big Society Fund. So we must have quite a lot of MI going back now over the applications that have been made over the last 5 or 6 years, or how long it's been going for. If there are any trends there where we've got a number of parishes who have never made any applications at all, and I think that would be useful to point out to the members who represent those parishes to see, as examples, actually what they're potentially missing out on. Is that something we could do then, actually get some MI to do that, to have a look at that?
I believe, Chairman, members, that the annual reports of this grant scheme over a number of years are available on the council's website. So I think it is available for anybody to access, be it elected members or our town and parish councils. Our officers, I think, do promote this opportunity widely, but that's not to say we couldn't go further. But I think that management information is available and could be pulled together in a composite report if that would be helpful.
I suppose it's worth mentioning, of course, some of those that receive the funding do benefit the district as a whole, pulling individuals from the district as a whole, perhaps even further afield, thinking perhaps of sports groups like the Norfolk Hockey Club, of course, who are active in Sheringham. But I know an awful lot of people from the west of the district come to their club. So, but I think that sort of understanding, the level of understanding is useful. It's the case that, of course, parish councils do make up a significant amount of those bids for funding, but we do want to attract community groups, charities to do so as well. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that there's more to our responsibilities as individuals, because I have 9 parishes, and therefore what I've done there as an individual, and it's a suggestion for others, but is the people that have been successful with bids, I connect them up with those that are thinking about bids, because often they're put off by the process.
Yeah.
So again, there is work for us to do that you can put out all, as Councillor Kershaw said, you can take the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But we maybe have people within our communities that can share that knowledge and experience to do it as well. So I think there's a big emphasis on members in this to take this forward, to get these activities within our communities.
Yeah. Okay. Were there any other speakers? Okay. So the recommendation was to receive a report and note the contribution the Sustainable Communities Fund makes on council priorities in respect to quality of life, climate, coast and environment. So I don't know if we need to take a vote here. Yeah, okay, so I propose that we do that. Is that seconded by Richard? And all of those, I presume everyone's in favour. Thank you. So item 10, council tax rebate discretionary scheme. And Wendy, I don't know if you wanted to say something about this now.
Thank you. This is part of the council tax energy rebate, which applies to those that are in band E to H, and also will be paying their council tax by cash or in other means, because thankfully to the teams, people between A and D who pay by direct debit have received their £150. So this is a fantastic policy drawn up by our officers, which takes into account those that wouldn't necessarily be on our radar. But if you have a look at the report, you'll see that. So my thanks go to the officers, and I commend this to you. Thank you.
So certainly needed, and certainly we should be trying to maximise, keep this fund going, the rebate going as far as we can to reach all of those who could possibly need it if we can help them. So very much welcome this. Were there any other speakers? Well, I propose then that we accept the recommendations. And that's seconded by Wendy. Is everyone in favour? Can we have a vote? Thank you, that's unanimous. And the discretionary hardship and support grant, item 11, say a similar theme. So, Wendy, I don't know if you want to say something again.
Again, my thanks go to the officers. They've really thought about those that are in poverty, that are struggling at the moment, the vulnerable, disabled, pensioners, unpaid carers, those with young children. This is a unique policy to North Norfolk, and I thank the officers for putting it together and giving us such a good policy so that we can actually help in crisis and help very, very immediately rather than waiting weeks and weeks and weeks. So thank you. I'd like you to commend that, and I'd like to thank the officers involved.
Absolutely. So 180,000 much needed support for families struggling in North Norfolk. Really welcome this proposal at a difficult time for many. And also want to thank staff for the work they've done in producing this proposal. And again, shows where our priorities lie as an authority. I really am grateful to the staff for putting their mind to this work, really, given how needed it is, clearly. John, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it's just the way that this is actually, for me, as a preventative. It's not, obviously there are, it's dealing with issues that people have. So for example, at 3.2 on page 38, the resettlement support, where we keep people engaged with their schools, communities and work, so that we're not building issues for the future. I think it's important in that aspect as well, but also the same thanks as well to officers for bringing it together in a very good way. Thank you.
Lucy, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to note, swapping caps for a minute in my role as mental health champion for this authority. If we look at 4.2, one of the criteria is to support a household where a person is receiving support from mental health services. And I think that's really important, especially in the current environment. And I just welcome that addition to the eligibility criteria.
So as John has said, there's a lot of preventative aims within this as well. And yeah, it's very certainly, I think, very valued, very valued. And of course, we will need to have further discussions with other organisations such as the Food Bank throughout the living cost crisis to see if they need further help. That will be work that the council continues to do. Those lines of dialogue are of course already open. Those conversations continue to take place. John, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wonder whether we had a sort of starting figure of how many people, families are involved now that would benefit from this immediately, and that we can monitor that by knowing in 2 or 3 months' time whether that figure has gone up, down or whatever. Thank you.
Interesting point. So I think it would be valuable for us to monitor this. And to a certain extent, of course, we've possibly been protected a little bit by the fact that winter was not so harsh. But the living cost crisis is, of course, going to be with us for some time to come. Wendy, did you want to respond?
Thank you. So how this is going to be monitored and distributed, it's going to be through our people services. So that's through our social prescribing and help hub team. So they'll be keeping a close eye on our recipients. So that will be monitored really closely. So I hope that helps you. And we're using our poverty dashboard as well that we bought to identify people, not only families, but people on pension credit, those in HMOs that will need credit that tops up their energy. So there's a vast array of people we can actually help. It's quite a broad spectrum, but we will have that monitored.
Could I just ask, because it is so topical and it's a moving thing, could we have a sort of regular, if possible, monthly update, if that's possible, whether it's through cabinet or whatever, just to get some idea rather than waiting 3 or 4 months and then saying, oh, we didn't realise it was going that way. It may move either way, but I think it might be worth, if it could be done, please.
I'll certainly ask the officers if we can have a monthly, if not quarterly. Thank you, John.
Just to back up John's question, if you look at paragraph 2.3, it lays out the current number of residents that we're helping.
Are there any other questions? Okay, so Wendy, I don't know if you proposed that we agree the scheme for the discretionary hardship and support grant. I'm happy to second. Can we have a vote for all those in favour? Brilliant, thank you, that's unanimous. Again, thank you for the work on that proposal. And look forward to seeing it to fruition. Very grateful. Item 12, car park consolidation order 2022. Eric, I don't know if you want to say something now.
Yes, I'll just say a few brief words. Jim, that this order, which we're required to approve, and that's set out in the recommendations on page 55, arises from the decision that was made at full council on 23rd of February in relation to some increase in proposed parking charges. The income from this increase is estimated to be around 230,000. I think it is just worth saying once again that this council is dependent on car parking income to provide a range of discretionary services. We are in no different position from many other councils up and down the country. The kind of discretionary services that this income supports is public toilets. It supports the maintenance and operation of our woodlands and parks. It's also the pier. It also helps to keep our beaches clean and safe. They are all services which are to the benefit of, and I know are valued by, our residents and also by our visitors. But without car parking income, those kind of services could not be provided. The increase that is proposed is based on the consumer price index since the last increase in July 2016. In real terms, all we're doing is going back to where the car park charges were at that time. And the last thing I'll say and make a plug once again, our season tickets remain frozen. They have not been increased. It's well over a decade now since there was any significant increase in season tickets. And particularly for our residents, they provide very good value for money. They are cheaper now than they were 10 years ago. So on that basis, I move the recommendations.
Angie, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to add to the discretionary costs. Of course, that includes coastal management. Whilst the major schemes are usually funded from outside, the day-to-day work is all discretionary. So we also rely on car parking.
So we've got to see this in the context of all of the property we maintain and in many cases struggle to maintain given the costs, and those examples exist across the district. It's right that it's right the visitor car parks as well continue to make perhaps the largest contribution given the visitor impacts on the district and much of the tourist focused infrastructure there for our visitor economy. So I think that's understood moving forward. Just a couple of points to raise. There was a comment, it's fair to say a very small number of comments, public comments overall. There was a comment in respect of motorcycle parking at Queen's Road and whether this might be considered in future, and also I suppose a question for us as to what we do given the issue over long stay at Albert Street and Stade Street in Wells. And I know the opposite recommendation there that we proceed as originally envisaged. I don't know if there's someone that might be able to respond on either of those points.
So Stade Street Wells is a very small car park. I think it's only got 8 chargeable spaces. It's right adjacent to Stade Street, which is the principal shopping street. I think to allow use by long-term season ticket holders will restrict the turnover of spaces in that location to the detriment of the high street. You could find a local resident and or owner of a holiday property who parks there for long periods of time and doesn't move, effectively taking that space out of use. Similar issues apply in Holt and Albert Street. I think there is a concern that human nature is that most people will park as close to their place of work as possible. So you could find Albert Street full very early in the day, or through overnight parking by residents that don't have off-street parking. And so in order to promote the health of the local economy in Holt and recognising the importance of the Albert Street car park, it's recommended that we don't change the position in respect of use of long stay permits on those 2 car parks, and that people should alternatively use the Stearman's Yard car park in Wells and the Station Yard car park in Holt for long stay purposes, allowing a greater turnover of spaces in support of the town centre economy in both of those towns. The short stay car park permits are largely purchased by local residents, often older people with a maximum 3-hour stay. It's felt that those permits are appropriate to use on those 2 car parks because they are for short stay visits for shopping or access to town centre facilities and amenities. So the officer recommendation is that you stick with the arrangements that you have, which restricts or prevents use of long stay season ticket permits on both Stade Street Wells and Albert Street Holt for the reasons I've outlined. So, yeah, I think the issue of the need for turnover in the car parks is understood for our town centres. Is there any possibility of motorcycle parking at Queen's Road? I'm not that familiar with that part of car park, I must admit. I can take that back to the property services team. Obviously, in terms of the Queen's Road car park in Fakenham, we are now providing a new toilet block, our updated toilet block facilities in that car park, and I think some consideration is being given to whether sort of 10-minute or 15-minute spaces can be provided so people can use those amenities. And it might be that once the works are completed, there is some sort of surplus or unutilised land that could accommodate motorcycles, which couldn't accommodate a car or regular vehicle. So I'll ask the property services team to see whether they can accommodate that request.
Okay, fantastic. So useful comments there from residents and others perhaps who responded to the consultation. The recommendations have been proposed by Councillor Seaward. I'm happy to second them. vote of those all in favour, please. Yeah, it's unanimous. Item 13 is managing performance for the last quarter of 2021 and 2022. So just introduction as a way of introducing this report, we're clearly going to see some impacts on the delivery of affordable housing due to the very difficult position we have been left in by the nutrient neutrality guidance. But we will still do our best to make good progress in supporting those in need of housing, despite those very difficult range of circumstances out of our control. And for all of those that are struggling to get the housing that they require now, I certainly feel very sorry for them. It's a very difficult period of time. I think I've reflected on with some of you before that I certainly now see more housing casework than social care casework, which always used to be the opposite in Norfolk. And we recognise the level of work that the housing options team certainly are doing all the time. The recruitment of the energy officer is a wonderful achievement. I think that we can be proud of. And it will certainly prove to be more valuable as we get to the close of the current financial year. And it's of course early stages at the moment, but of course lots of visibility for that officer in the media, and I'm sure they will be very valued by residents and indeed landlords. Clearly we've seen some success in attracting some new investment in the east of the district, and I hope we can realise some more opportunities in the future. There is interest, of course, in further locations, and look forward to further progress, of course, in delivering HAS and the economic growth strategy. Some very good work has been done in that last quarter. So spectacular progress, of course, in meeting our environmental targets over the winter period, and a huge amount of progress with the tree planting. We're seeing the same photo of Nigel quite a lot with the trees in his hands. But huge amount of work achieved there by Nigel Stennett and all of the community groups involved. The membership of the Reef continues to be very strong, exceeding our expectations, of course. Very proud of that work. And of course, we're also delivering new toilets, despite some of the setbacks in some of the individual construction projects. So, of course, now attention turns to some of the current challenges in terms of delivering the rebate, and staff showing just how versatile and dynamic they are again. And we're seeing some very good progress there. Were there any questions from members, or is there anyone else that wanted to speak on this? Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, clearly the nutrient neutrality, we will be getting briefings and things on that from members. That's coming down the line. It does pose concerns for the affordable homes, but we have got sites still coming forward, but of course they will be very much longer in their decision on those. We don't know where it's going to affect the viability. These are all things that we're going to have to work out, but really just to assure people that we are working on it to try and find solutions that are affordable so that we can continue to deliver the maximum number of affordable homes the schemes have come forward. So,
absolutely. I suppose comparing ourselves to other similar authorities, we have perhaps a greater mix of housing pressures in terms of certainly nutrient neutrality now, second homes. It's an interesting sort of comparison there. And as I said at the beginning, it's delivering homes. It's an area, lots of constituent parts, lots of individual parts, and lots of individual ways of work. But this is a big spanner in the works, really. And really grateful to staff who are trying to work through this. But we do arguably need some help by the government in delivering homes in Norfolk now, and really be helpful if we were able to deliver houses ourselves and that should include funding, of course, but that's a big ask. However, I think it's necessary. Does anyone else want to say anything? Christopher, go ahead.
With regard to nutrient neutrality, when are we likely to hear the next step? What's the action especially being taken?
It's yes, lots has been said, well, it'll be in the next 2 weeks, but of course, it's a matter of when things do progress. John, do you want to say something more?
Yeah, I mean, when we got Natural England, not just with the housing thing, but they're sending us things that say there's a particular application, a farming application, where it could have an effect on the nutrient neutrality, but they're saying, but we can't measure that at the moment, but you as an authority need to make the decision, but we've got no way of measuring it. It's really not being helpful. There are some real issues with the way this has been brought to us with no solutions or answers. It's really, I would love to be able to say that we will know in 1 month, 2 months, whatever. We just can't say at this time, but we are working with all the other authorities because we have to do that as well. We can't go off on our own in this sort of maverick way because it affects people down the line in the water flow. Yes, I mean, I sit actually with Councillor Brown as well because of the policy implications. We both sit on the group for, all the authorities that link together in this area, and there are 2 officer groups that are working on it as well. We're getting specialist advice, we're taking legal advice, but unfortunately we cannot at this time put any sort of time scale on it, but we are working extremely hard at it to try and get to some solutions. And as I say, we will be bringing a briefing to members, which again, we can, discuss these things and hopefully give some people some understanding of the issues that are involved.
So, I perhaps remiss of me as well not to mention the longer term economic impacts of this, besides the housing impacts on people, builders and others related trades that I speak to now say that they're busy with work, and indeed, you drive through the town centre of Cromer and the scaffolding all over the place. But, I'm certainly concerned if this were to continue for a longer period of time. I don't know if we know yet the impact on seasonal campsites. Forgive me, I've forgotten the terminology for them, the ones that are rewarded an annual permit, in fact, by Natural England, I believe. So I don't know what the implications are there on tourist economy in the longer run. And of course, there's impacts potentially on the care market as well, albeit we don't see enough care homes delivered, of course, but certainly we want to see more extra care certainly delivered among other care offers across the county, not just the district.
In terms of the seasonal campsite, that's a 28-day rule. My understanding is that they aren't affected by the proposals, nutrient neutrality issues, because they are permitted development. They are for a limited period of time. They aren't providing permanent overnight accommodation, which is the constraint that Natural England have suggested authorities shouldn't grant consent. So that does involve permanent dwellings and other tourist accommodation, but not seasonal 28-day permitted development campsites. My understanding was that through the duty to cooperate framework in Norfolk, consultants have now been appointed to advise the partnership on the nutrient neutrality issue, and I think that they are hopeful that there will be some clarity provided as to the Norfolk position by early September. But they have only very recently been appointed within the last 10 days, so I don't have details of their work programme, but it is, as Councillor Toy has advised, an issue that is being considered at a very sort of high level within all of the authorities affected in the county, and that appointment of specialist advice has recently been made.
I do believe we've got a meeting later today with Norfolk leaders, unless I've got my diary correct and I've not remembered that correctly, which is a possibility. But those meetings continue at a high level between leaders and relevant portfolio holders, etc. And I hope that we find a solution as soon as possible. Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just to reiterate what Councillor Toy has said, I think we're still waiting clarity on whether planning applications which have reserved matters are able to continue to be developed as opposed to those that have got full consent, which we know can be continued if they were granted before the 16th of March when the announcement was made. My concern is, with my hat as chair of the working party, is about the threat to the 5-year land supply that this presents, and also that developers are going to fly, as it were, to other areas of the country which are not caught by the nutrient neutrality embargo, and once they go there and seek sites and apply for planning permissions in other local authorities, they quite often don't return to Norfolk. So that's a very, very serious concern.
You're right.
And I think from my point of view, I don't have an issue with the government in terms of trying to improve the quality of our watercourses. Only 12% of our watercourses are of sufficient quality, acceptable quality. So there's a serious problem. I think the difficulty has been with the lack of guidance that has come out from Natural England, who I'm not sure may have a conflict themselves, because I think they grant licenses to the caravan club and people like that for campsites, and now they're seeking to prevent them operating, unless there's a distinction made between overnight accommodation, which is temporary, and overnight accommodation, which is permanent, which the chief executive has referred to earlier. I'm a little bit unsure on that, but maybe this afternoon at 4 o'clock, Mr. Chairman, the meeting on Teams with the duty to cooperate body may clarify that for us.
Thank you for refreshing my mind on the diary. Okay. Were there any other questions? John, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification. On page 117, the AP 002, the number of changing places facilities provided, as when this was printed, it was correct. I can inform members that there is a delay in the one in Queen's Road, Fakenham, and it will not be achieved by June 2022. Hopefully it will be before March 2023, and they're hoping to get it ready by the summer. But the main problem has been a power cable supply, which was misinterpreted as not being heavy cable, but was 13. But it's just so that people are aware that may need to slightly change. Okay, thank you.
Sadly, you do come across these problems when you embark on any construction projects, even one as ambitious as this. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so yeah, thank you, John. So I would propose that the Cabinet resolves to note this report and endorses the actions being taken by the corporate leadership team detailed in Appendix A. Is that seconded by Richard? And I presume everyone's in favour? Fantastic. Okay, that takes us nicely on to the next item, changing places, public convenience investment strategy. Of course, it's certainly our ambition to deliver one of these facilities in every town. The scale of our ambition has, of course, been recognised by the government. We've been very successful in getting the £300,000 worth of grant money. Eric, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to say on this item.
Yeah, yes, I'll just be brief again, Chairman. This is an allocation from a successful bid of £300,000, and it's how we allocate that money. And what is recommended here is set out in paragraph 10 on pages 166 to 167. So we are talking about funding Fakenham Queen's Road, Weld Stearman's Yard, Sheringham the Lees and North Horsham Vicarage Street, with each toilet receiving an allocation of £60,000. In addition to that, We are in discussions with the Museum of the Broads at Stalham. They have had a successful lottery bid and I've put forward 15,000, and the report recommends that the District Council from this bid contributes a further 45,000. And then the last recommendation relates to Holt, with the most suitable place for a toilet with changing place facilities. And these toilets do require parking in front, within very close proximity to them. We're looking at Albert Street, where the £15,000 would be from the changing place facilities grant, and £45,000 would be provided by the District Council. That will be significant progress in meeting our corporate plan objectives of having changing place facilities in every, at least one, in every of our major towns across the district. I also draw members' attention that there is the possibility of a second round for changing place facilities. We don't know the details yet, but should that bidding process be commenced, then the council will be minded to apply once more for funding to extend the provision of this service, which I just remind is actually having public toilets which are suitable for people with significant or complex health conditions, to ensure that we have clean spaces with suitable equipment, that they are centrally placed, and there can be two carers with the person involved. So on that basis, I move the recommendation.
Thank you, Eric. We spoke at the beginning or towards the beginning of the meeting about ambitions for funding for our localities, our towns and villages. And indeed, you know, certainly I would hope that in the longer term, we could realise some funding for some of the larger villages, and perhaps, you know, the villages with the highest footfall. There are clearly economic benefits to this strategy as well in ensuring everyone can visit these communities and have the best day out possible, and it's accessible to everyone. So, you know, I hope we can get there and deliver that in the longer term. Coastal admin and villages, but Wendy, I've got Wendy and then John.
Thank you. I particularly welcome this policy. Also, I really like the second round funding. If you can consider Munsley, it has a large footfall, and also there'll be beach wheelchairs there at some time in the future. So it would make sense that we could have a change in place, perhaps on the prom. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Certainly, I would expect that to be, you know, a key part of Munsley's offer in future. I hope we can achieve that. Obviously, we're not in a position to give any commitment at this stage, but I hope we can commit at least to investigating that possibility. I think Munsley wants to realise that potential as well in terms of increasing accessibility. And the work that's been done, of course, on beach wheelchairs is fantastic, and certainly it's opened up places for people for the first time, perhaps in a long time, or the first time in our beaches. So very certainly, John, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to use this as a point to raise the importance of the role of member champions. In this case, Councillor Spagnola, who, you know, has alerted us to all of this some time ago. And this project has really grown in a way that we really should be proud of, along with the addition of the beach wheelchairs. So yeah, you know, member champions within the authority are really important to highlight these issues and to enable us to steer them in the right direction. That's really productive. So I just wanted to add that point. Thank you.
Certainly, Councillor Spagnola has made a big significant difference in sort of changing our strategy and adapting our view on these matters, and certainly bringing it to our attention. So very much welcome their role and what they achieve. Councillor Dixon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to raise two questions. First one is in relation to paragraph 5, and Councillor Seawood has alluded to the matters regarding the possibilities of Stalham, and it it's already acknowledged that the discussions have involved the Broads Authority and clearly the Broads Museum. But I just wonder whether any discussions were had with the Stalham Town Council in relation to this one. And my second question is in relation to paragraph 7. And I wonder whether any discussions have been had with Houghton, Potter Heigham, Horning and Ludham, or indeed Munsley, as was mentioned earlier, whether any discussions have been had with any of those parish councils with regard to where they might be in the bidding stage, shall we say, and the requirements for changing places, facilities. And in the case of Houghton, I just wonder as well, because Houghton is obviously cheek by jowl with Wroxham, and it together is the major Broads tourist centre. And I wouldn't be asking this council necessarily to provide a changing places facility on its own, but I do think there's a case here for cross-border working with Broughton District Council with regard to the provision for both of those villages. And I wonder whether any work has been done in that connection, please.
Do you want to go ahead? I'm happy to take that question. So in terms of when the initial call was made by government around the Changing Places funding programme about this time last year, the Broads Authority approached us directly and said that they had conversations with the Museum of the Broads in Stalham and were prepared to make a financial contribution to delivery of a Changing Places facility at that location. So in terms of considering what a Changing Places facility is, the provision nationally has been very modest. If you look at a map, the Norfolk County Council did some work last summer plotting where those facilities were. It's fair to say that across the county as a whole, the provision of dedicated Changing Places facilities was very modest. And so obviously they're provided in hospital environments. There's a facility in the Chapel Field, Chalmsbury Place, large retail development in Norwich. And I think a couple of Tesco's superstores also have that provision. But beyond that, provision was very modest. So North Norfolk District Council's ambitions to provide or facilitate the provision of a Changing Places facility in each of the district's 7 principal settlements was quite progressive in the context of policy, both nationally and regionally. And I think it has reflected the success of the authority in this funding round. So the provision, the challenge to authorities, and we have seen this already in North Norfolk, is that it is best to locate these facilities alongside other facilities where possible, so there's better supervision, so there isn't abuse of the space, and therefore in the context of Stalham, it was felt that a facility at the Museum of the Broads, a supervised tourist facility, was best, rather than making provision in the town centre, where the council's own regular public convenience facilities are modest and are located alongside a Tesco's, which is open from 7 in the morning till 10 p.m. at night, and therefore provides a reasonable public level of amenity. So that was the position in Stalham. In terms of the wider Broads area, Ludham, Potter Heigham, Horning and Houghton, there wasn't consideration given by the District Council to provision of the facilities in those locations, because the council's agreed policy was to look for delivery in the first instance in the 7 principal settlements. In terms of cross-border conversations with
Broadland District Council. I don't know whether there was a conversation with Broadland District Council, but unilaterally Norfolk County Council have made a decision to invest in a changing places facility at the Wroxham Library, which isn't where the peak footfall is in Hovton, but that is a decision that the County Council have decided to proceed with. The County Council have also said that they would look at provision along the North Norfolk coast AONB, either at Morstan Quay or Brancaster Quay, but those decisions have been taken forward out with any strategy of the District Council.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Nigel, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I take it the answer to my questions was basically no. No discussions have been had with Stalham Town Council and no discussions have been had with the respective parish councils. Is that correct?
You can interpret it in that way, in that this council's stated priority in seeking to make provision, generous provision in the first instance of these facilities was in respect of the 7 principal settlements in the district. That is the council's corporate position.
Can I just say, obviously, Nigel, we did have a discussion on site at Stalham. I believe yourself, unless you'd left at that point in time, but certainly myself and Councillor Kershaw, Matthew were present. We were discussing Stalham's toilet provisions. We discussed how the toilet off of the town centre was constrained, and for the reasons, some of which have been raised today, possibly wasn't the best site. But whether, as part of a future placemaking project, we would want to deliver such a facility, I would certainly want to consider that possibility. So that I would see that as a discussion that we have had with the town council. Certainly, I recall approaches from Munsley Parish Council on the matter as well. So there's been a discussion of sorts with perhaps 1 or 2 parishes on this point. But moving forward, beyond the delivery of facilities in the towns, we've clearly got work to do in considering the delivery in the villages. And I think I thank you for raising Hobbiton. I think it's absolutely somewhere we should look to deliver a facility in the future. And I'm sure we'll agree with that. And hopefully there are opportunities for work with other authorities. Certainly we mentioned the Broads. But in fact, if there is an opportunity to work with Broadland District Council, I'm sure we would take that up. Certainly, want to have continued discussions with Stalham Town Council on the future of the town. I think they're moving forward leaps and bounds, aren't they, as a town council? And I know they've had a very fine few days of events, and they're seeking to develop themselves quite a lot for the future of the town. So really welcome the work that they're doing, and I hope that we can realise some projects alongside them in the future. Go ahead.
Can I just come back on that? I acknowledge that we had that meeting over at Stalham. The thrust of my point really is not that. The thrust of my point is here are engagement opportunities for this district council with town and parish councils across the district. Now, I'm not suggesting that that applies to all of them, but certainly within the broad strategy of the 7 settlements, for example, and perhaps looking at, although Hovton doesn't qualify under the 7 principal settlements, Hovton and Wroxham should not be ignored as a conurbation, 50% of which is in the North Norfolk District Council area and 50% in the Broadland District Council area. So, and the second point I would make is that the whole reason why we had that meeting over at Stalham was because the Stalham Town Council had felt disenfranchised and disengaged principally from many opportunities that it saw as possibilities with this council. So I saw that as a second, a secondary, if you like, opportunity, where the primary opportunity should be at officer level, because it's officer input principally that goes into this paper here. And I would just make those 2 points, that we have had that discussion, but that's retrospective. And that's in, I think, recognition of a deficit there. And I wouldn't want to go into the merits, the whole idea, I wouldn't want to go into the merits of whether there should or shouldn't be at Stalham. What I would like to see is that communication, that dialogue, if you like, that opportunity, and the feeling that those parish councils, the town parish councils that I've mentioned, feel that they are actually having an opportunity to have their say. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Perhaps we can also have a discussion at the forum when it next meets. I think there's an opportunity there to talk to the town and parish councils engaged with that. But certainly, look forward to further discussions with some of the councils you've mentioned, Stalham particularly. I know we've got a meeting upcoming with Anglian Water, and indeed we mentioned some of the concerns around Anglian Water infrastructure and highways infrastructure. But certainly we would hope to have a discussion about what more work we can be doing in Stalham as a district council. It's something that I'm very keen to explore in further detail. And indeed, I heard from Stalham Town Council over the weekend in respect of their events and some help that was required. So, that dialogue continues. Anything you can do, obviously, as the local member is always very valued. So thank you, Nigel. So were there any indications? I might have missed them. Go ahead.
I was just going to highlight the excellent town and parish forum that takes part, that Emma Denny looks after. We have a really great number of clerks and councillors that come along there, and they can ask us whatever they like. And I think that's been really helpful for both sides. So that we're hearing what the town and parish councils need, because we're not in the business of doing things to parish councils and town councils. We're doing them with our communities and we're listening to them. So I just want to highlight that. Thank you.
So I'm sorry I missed the particular meeting, and I'm anxious I might even miss the next one based on the size of the bump at the moment, but we shall see. But certainly welcome the that intervention. I think we certainly have the discussion, if we can do, with the towns and parishes, because I think we've definitely got more work to do. We recognise that we've got a very good champion within the council for these facilities, and no doubt we will be pushed forward, and hopefully outside funding bodies, including the government, will continue as they have done to recognise our ambitions. Okay, so the recommendations were that we agree to offer some proposals for further change of places investments at the locations identified, agree to the recommended changes to the capital budget identified within section 10 of the report, and delegate authority to the director for resources to develop and agree governance and reporting arrangements with the Broads Authority and funding provided. So I propose that those recommendations are accepted, seconded by Councillor Toy, and are we all in favour? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so item 15, Cromer Pier infrastructure works. And Lucy, I don't know if you wanted to say anything to start us off here.
I won't add much to it. The report's in front of you. These works, as it says in 2.2, are critical to the continued use of the structure and the health and safety of all those who use the facility. I would just like to note for members that page 177 is part of the exempt purple paper, so if there are any questions related to that, we would need to go into private business.
Thank you for highlighting that. Okay, so I think it's fair to say this is the third phase of major works, after which hopefully the bill for Cromer Pier will look at slightly different in future years, but also this is essential works to grade 2 listed structure, I should say. Makes a key part of our offer as a district for visiting tourists, and of course locals and other leisure users who use the facilities, and of course the wonderful theatre. So it's absolutely essential that we maintain the structure. Are there questions? Christopher, go ahead. And did I see Councillor Nigel Dixon as well, and I've got Angie, so quite a few of them. Go ahead, Christopher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're about to make a decision on agreeing a sizable sum of money, and that sum is hidden in a private paper, so I can't actually quote it. In order to, obviously any decisions like this ought to be transparent to our residents, so could not at least an indicative sum be given, indicated as to what you're going to approve today, so that our residents could be aware of that?
I don't believe there's an issue with saying what the budget is overall in terms of that provision. I think that should be a transparent decision. I don't know whether it's in purple papers at the present time because the works haven't been out to tender. So I think you've got a contract here that has identified the works, but I don't know whether, if it is a tender, I think it should now be public, but I would need to check that because it does say following an open tender process, one tender valued at just under £850,000. If you are going to make budgetary provision, I think that should be in a public report. I agree with Councillor Cushing's observations in that regard. Okay. Can I make further inquiries and come back?
Yeah,
of the officer that drafted the report?
Yeah, and certainly the money involved will be certainly disclosed and published. Is that okay, Christopher? I think I had Councillor Dixon next, and I've got Angie.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My point is much along the same lines, really. I would have expected there to have been two opportunities for the public to be aware of this. One would be initially in the budget allocation, and that I think, in all fairness to the public, and indeed myself, I can't say whether I've seen that quoted anywhere else, but if it had been quoted anywhere else, then I would expect it to be in this paper to say that a budgetary provision had been made and authorised at a particular point in the process. And that would perhaps have been sufficient in its own regard, but acknowledging the commercial confidentiality around tenders and contracts, I think that it's often helpful to quote an indicative figure, even if you've made an allocation and that allocation has either been exceeded or is less than that quoted. Then I think that a figure should be in here that informs the public, and there are no figures other than in the purple paper. So from the public perspective, I don't think that this is a very transparent way of transacting business.
I think the project itself has been discussed in the capital works programme for some time. It's certainly been in the capital budgets. We've been aware that the works to the legs of the pier were going to be required for some years as a result of our ongoing work to observe the deterioration of the pier and the maintenance work required. I have a few indications. I don't know if you wanted to come back on that point particularly, Virginia.
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Angie.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight the necessity for us to maintain the pier. There was a survey a couple of weeks ago of iconic buildings within Norfolk, and Cromer Pier was listed. Also, it's a huge tourist office, and I don't know how many of you bother to go to the Cromer Amdram do of Shrek the Musical that was on up until last weekend, which was absolutely fantastic. And I don't really like musicals, but even I enjoyed it. And so it is absolutely vital that we protect this pier. It is our biggest draw for the whole of the district. And I'm sorry, did you propose that?
Sorry, yes, I will be proposing this.
Right, I'll be more than happy to second it then, thank you.
Okay, brilliant. I've got Virginia. You don't wish to speak? Richard, sorry, go ahead.
I could add what Angie said. Shrek was absolutely outstanding. It really was terrific, and there were recognisable people taking part.
Good. Okay, Richard, go ahead. And I've got Nigel after.
It's just a qualify, as far as I understand, this is phase 3 of the works on the pier. And I think we should be transparent and have an indicative figure. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, okay. So it's phase 3 of 3, we should say. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Dixon, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just to clarify, my point isn't about the merit of whether the pier should be maintained and invested in. My point is purely for the purposes of transacting this piece of business. It seems to me to be fundamental that we should be quoting a figure here, and it's not.
I agree with Councillor Dixon, Chair. I think we need to amend the second recommendation that says that the report that comes to full council should include that detail.
Yeah,
in a public document, and I hope that suffices or addresses the concern raised this morning.
I don't think that causes any anxiety or problem. Of course, you know, we know any work of this scale vulnerable to inflation, difficult to find contractors who are willing to work on such a structure. Of course, it's very particular work, but we have found them, and certainly would welcome that level of detail at the full council.
I think that's the issue. This isn't about procurement exemption. It's gone through a tender process. It's identified the preferred contractor. What we don't appear to have done is established a capital budget in an open and transparent way. And I concede that point. I think that's something we will need to seek to address in the report to full council. But it's not about the award of the contract. It's about the establishment of the budget in an open forum.
Thank you. Thank you for those interventions. Okay, so it's been proposed by. Sorry, was there another intervention? Did you want to speak? Sorry, I didn't see you, Nigel.
But actually, Steve's, I sort of kind of agree with what Councillor Dixon has said. We should be transparent. I mean, I don't know about, in terms of just transparency for this forum, shall we go into private business? Is there, so that these guys can see the papers?
You can see the papers.
They can see the papers. Okay.
Unless, you know, public access.
Okay.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. No, thank you for that. Okay, so it's been proposed by Councillor Shires and seconded by Councillor Fitch-Tillett that the recommendations are accepted. Is that?
Chair, you need to amend the second recommendation.
Yeah.
In the way that I described. So I think the approve the award is fine. I think you should amend the second recommendation, that the report to full council that a capital budget is approved, identifies a fixed capital sum in a transparent way or something of that nature.
Okay, that you're both happy to accept that. Thank you for the intervention. And we are happy to accept that. Okay, everyone all in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, obviously we've dealt with item 16. We move to item 17 for the exclusion of the press and public, which we do require given the approval of the insurance contract. So if we pass the relevant motion under section 100A, the Local Government Act, I propose, seconded by Councillor Toy, all of those in favour,